Shinji and Warhammer40k. Chapter 16. Red vs. Blue. Part 2. In retrospect, dropping an N2 mine into an active volcano was a spectacularly bad idea.
Oh, I so wanted to go to the hot springs when the mission was done, Misato was heard complaining. But now, well, the hot springs are gone.
Along with most of the countryside, it wasn't so much an eruption as an all-consuming flood of lava spilling out the broken caldera. There was also whatever secondary effects it would cause to the already volatile fault lines already present all over Japan. At least there was one scene of devastation that couldn't be blamed on Shinji. Wait, he was around, wasn't he? That was enough. He's like a humanoid typhoon. Click. Zoop. That image was replaced by something else.
The angel is, well, big,
Misato pointed to the screen.
The thing we were looking at was a decoy. Yes, it had a blue pattern, but we just stopped looking when he found what we expected. The angel was underneath, disguising itself. It was a trap.
She tapped at the expected angel, which was a little smaller than an Ava. She then slid her presenter stick over to the actual combat form, which was well over 3 times the size. Seeing something about twice the size of Godzilla had made everyone in the military push the panic button.
It's like David and Goliath. It's just overwhelmingly powerful that way.
Ritsuko nodded.
I suppose it also tells much that its underground form looks like that of a flatfish.
Ray raised her hand.
Captain Katsuragi, what are the angel's capabilities? We know it can survive extreme heat and pressure. Its outer skin seems to have the consistency of rock. Some of that might actually be rock. That natural toughness combined with its great size means that the Avas have no chance in close combat.
What about the AT field? Shinji asked next.
Did you notice it using any? The ones from before were just scary in using it, but since we defeated that, it's like this one decided such tricks weren't the way to go. It tried to force the Avas into where it was at such absolute disadvantage.
Asuka shrank back on her seat.
It ran away. To be precise, Pilot Suryu, both of you ran away.
Asuka growled. Maya, over the projector, helpfully replayed the last battle. Shinji felt himself stop. He wedged himself to a stop with his feet between the jaws. The other 2 jaws closed in, and he had to force those open too with his arms. He looked down at the rows of teeth inside a worm-like mouth. He groaned. This just bites. Sandalphon trashed about but couldn't get the leverage. Finally, it occurred to itself that the Evangelion just couldn't possibly withstand the same pressures it could. The angel reared back and be prepared to dive deep. It jerked to a stop.
Baka!
Asuka shouted over the link.
You're just going to be hopeless without me to hold your hand, won't you?
Asuka, you're Ava. No hesitation, just jumping in like that. Finally, Asuka, heroic. The girl smirked, though her cheek twitched. She was feeling everything, such was the peril of a high sync ratio. She could feel it all, cracking and burning under the strain. She grit her teeth.
Don't mind it. Don't think too much of it. It just gets too boring.
She pulled at the other Ava's connecting line while she held on to the main cables. Unit 2's eyes glowed as she had it heave as if the angel was, like it looked, a fish on a hook. His heart filled with wonder. Asuka, I need it. Your AT field. Spread your AT field.
Don't say it like that, Doomkopf,
she spat. Look down, Asuka. She did.
Holy crap!
Sandalphon spat out the Ava and flipped up the spines on its back. It sank down again in preparation for another open-mouth charge. The pilots hastily brought out their AT fields. Unit 2 was flung out of the volcano. It spun around in mid-air to crash tumbling down the slope. Asuka reached out and dug with the Ava's fingers to try and arrest her momentum. Eventually, dizzily, she stopped. She heard something roar. She looked up.
Huge!
Something vaguely like a horned toad emerged from the erupting volcano. It splashed down on the open caldera and had the lava flowing even faster out. The purple Ava ran down the slope like an Olympic sprinter. A fat Olympic sprinter? It skidded to a stop near the red Ava. "What the hell is that?" shrieked Asuka. "The angel," Shinji responded simply. Sandalphon emerged, puffing out as its mass expanded without all the pressure to hold it in. Lava flowed upwards, hardening into overlapping plates. Its two eyes moved to opposite sides of its head. Two dark, oblong things popped out of its eye stalk-like tendrils. Finally, the angel's skull-like mask emerged. They could see its core, behind several protective spiky protrusions on his forehead. "Did we bring the heavy bolter?" he asked Asuka. It'd take too long to take off the Type D equipment. She'd have to fight it on her own.
"No."
She looked up at the sheer size of the thing.
"And we don't have range with the normal bolters."
It scooped up with its tail, and a mass of lava flew up over its head. It flowed into a globe, quickly solidifying, and through the air like a catapult-fired boulder, admittedly a boulder the size of a small building. The projectile slammed into the ground a short distance away from the Evangelions. Both pilots scowled and grit their teeth. "There's a time for courage!" shouted Shinji. Both Avas took a step forward.
"And there's a time to run like hell!"
finished Asuka. Both Avas pivoted on that foot and began to scamper down the mountain. Boulders began raining down just right behind them. Down below, Misato scowled at the sight.
"Wait a minute! They're coming here!"
She met everyone else's wide-eyed gazes.
"Out! Everybody out! Start the trucks! Start the trucks, damn it!"
Sandalphon roared out, as if exulting in its victory, doing what its siblings could not, to send the enemy fleeing. Boom! Ow! The screen showed an overhead map view of the damage. The pillar of acrid smoke could be seen as far away as Kyoto too. While it wasn't a massive eruption, every day the open volcano was pumping ash into the air. Eventually it could affect even the global climate conditions. That was less frightening to consider than an enemy that could cause earthquakes at will. Misato sighed.
"We ended up leaving most of the equipment behind. More stuff for me to sign for."
Ritsuko adjusted her glasses, having it glint under the projector light. She sat there in the back row, beside a grinning Kaji. Fortunately, he was under Misato's sight, so he couldn't misbehave too much.
"Unfortunately, it seems to have the perfect defense. Simply because we have no way of following it down into magma, it decides where and when we should face it."
Fortunately, the angels, while they sought the destruction of the human race, were operating upon the recovery of Adam rather than engineering themselves for mass destruction. If they wanted to wipe out humanity, they could probably do it, if they looked beyond the obvious shortcut lazy way to do it.
"Did the N2 bomb even do anything to it?"
Asuka turned about in her seat to ask the UN attaché. "We don't know. It's deep underground right now. The fact that it takes that so easily means the bomb might have only annoyed it."
"Like a flashbang,"
Misato realized.
"It doesn't really do anything to inflict damage, but it fully hurts the senses."
Sandalphon, to move in its chaotic living environment, had to have senses tuned to a keen range. It was still trying to adjust to the normal above-ground conditions. Beyond that, its resistance to damage was just unholy. "Misato-san, I did notice something about it," said Shinji. "The AT field, it doesn't use it for active defenses or offense like the others, but like the angel that attacked us in the ocean, it seems to use it for propulsion."
"Propulsion?"
"It's using that to hold itself together. It melts rock or solidifies lava, and so moves by altering the environment to suit itself. Throwing big rocks the size of, well, Avas seemed to consist of its only ranged attack. It wasn't as impressive as, say, a packed particle beam, but in its own way, that much more intimidating. It indicated an understated mastery of the AT field that he just had to respect."
"Ah!"
Asuka clutched at her hair and began to shake her head.
"It doesn't make sense! You're acting as if the AT field is linked to space-time. It can't be. Everything's at a relative state, and all that energy has to come from somewhere and then go to somewhere."
"An infinite power source and an infinite energy sink in the same place could break several properties of causality," Ritsuko had to agree. "To protect itself from a no-limits fallacy, or just simultaneously exploding and imploding,
I believe the angel is simply directing particles across its field. Add loose energy to something and its molecules vibrate. Remove energy and it cools. Those fins, just like a heat sink when out at the open air. It explains why it can use its AT field while in magma. Of course, there's still how the Avers can use their field. You figured out the push and pull of the AT field, Sensei? It seems obvious now in retrospect. You just pump out energy and create the field relative to your perceptions at the time. So, if you say it's supposed to be fixed, then it will remain so relative to where it was made solid when you decided it would.
She turned to Asuka.
The AT field is relative to whatever you decide it should be fixed in relation to. So a fixed field is relative to the Earth in perception of location. A tactical field is relative to the Ava.
Of course it could yet be that the damn things might still be fixed to space-time. It was just they had no opportunity to test for it, since everything including them and the testing equipment were of course all moving relative to something. She groaned once more.
What is the AT field anyway? Quantum weirdness like that shouldn't happen on a macro scale. I think you just hit it right, Asuka. The AT field is short for absolute territory. It's not the effects, but rather what allows such things to happen. The push, pull or barrier properties are not a function of the field itself, but rather like occurrences in a sea of probability.
Asuka and Ritsuko began to rub their heads. If things continued to go on, these fools might start with punching at things in past, present and future all simultaneously. Fortunately, no one else there understood the sheer inanity of the possibilities.
If it cannot use its AT field in standard defensive purposes,
Ray said,
should it not be vulnerable to conventional attack? We have no need to neutralize its field. We may simply borrow the positron cannon again. Somehow I don't think it'll be that simple,
Masato replied, shaking her head sadly.
The last time we had to borrow all the energy of Japan. It moves faster, so we can't be sure of hitting the core precisely. I think this teaches us a lesson in never being too arrogant and underestimating what the enemy can do. It only has one moment of vulnerability.
Ritsuko held her hand up, as a signal for Maya to rewind the video. She did so.
There, switching from an underground form to an above-ground combat form. It lasts only a minute or so, and the core is moving all in the meantime.
Ray raised her hand again, asking permission to speak.
Yes?
Ritsuko recognised a certain eagerness in the girl's eyes.
Then we should not aim for the core. We just keep on shooting it until it becomes motionless. Then we may aim for the core. How bloodthirsty of you!
Masato grinned.
The N2 mine doesn't seem to work against it, so a concentrated attack might. It's very big though. All angels seem to have that rapid healing thing.
She looked to Kaji.
If it shows up, we're going to need everything we can throw at it.
Sure,
he waved casually.
It's just like fighting Gojira. It's a nice change of pace for us.
Everyone else winced. Everyone remembered the eventual fate of things like that when against Godzilla. Would life imitate art even more thoroughly? The door into the mini-theatre all opened, and in walked Sub-Commander Fuyutsuki. He looked more world-weary and overworked than usual. He looked around at all the young faces, from those of the pilots so unafraid and the adults already rather blazed to the idea of total annihilation if they failed. He sighed and sat down in one of the chairs at the back row.
I've just been from a conference with Commander Ikari,
and Seal for that matter.
Our request for additional support has been denied. The use of N2 mines will remain at UN discretion, not ours. Any military assets will have to be whatever the JSSDF volunteers for the next operation.
Asuka got up, knees on her chair.
Why not?
Dr. Akagi, where's the angel now? He said instead.
She looked over to the projection stage. There, Maya switched from film to slides view and pulled up data from her laptop. The screen shifted to a flat map of the Hakone region.
We've been detecting localized earthquakes, so it's assumed that the angel is tunneling towards Tokyo 3. Is it going to try and drill through into the geofront? It's an unconventional approach,
Ritsuko answered Masato, while kicking at Kaji from under the chair.
but one that has the benefit of bypassing all our defences. It's a good thing there's simply too much hard rock for it to tunnel below or from the sides of the geofront. By its angle and heading, we can predict just where it will emerge out of the geofront wall.
The screen changed to a diagram of the geofront. The empty space that was nerve was just a minuscule portion off the top. The rest of the sphere was already filled in. By setting a trap, it seemed that the Evangelion was likewise as important a target for the attacking angel. "We have no way of affecting its route," Fuyutsuki added. "It might still tilt up or down or anywhere else before that. Commander Ikari denied allowing UN troops entry into Nerve proper." For good reason. Asuka sat back down.
Not that there'd be much use anyway.
"If so, then it would prevent a needless loss of life," Shinji added. "Other than the positron cannon, what do we have that's really armor-piercing?"
That would be the old bunker-busting missile, Shinji. But they need some time to really get up to speed, and only the UN Navy carries them. I hope the enemy attacks from above ground.
Misato stepped away from the screen and sat down too.
"Well, looks like it's all up to us again."
She stretched out.
Tuesday and Tokyo free. You're saying that as if we already have a way to defeat it. No worries, you'll figure out something just in time, Ritz-chan.
She held her thumb out.
We believe in you.
The scientist sighed and rubbed at her temples again.
Right. No pressure.
Giving Sandalphon's tunnelling speed, they had 2 days before contact. Misato tried to hide her frustration, but she wasn't allowed beer until they had some kind of battle plan. Ritsuko likewise paced around her laboratory, having Maya shuffle through all that they knew about the AT field again and again. The simplest idea was a combined attack by the 3 Evangelions, with one in a suicidal attack role. It would try and get onto the massive angel and bring an N2 mine close to the core. Due to the slope of the thing's head, aiming downwards with a heavy bolter or positron rifle just wouldn't work. Apparently, while the angels still had to display their core on the outside, they knew now they should protect it. Of course, that was quickly rejected. It was too vague. If it failed, they'd be out at Evangelion with no backup plan. Asuka had asked her about that. Why did it need to be so vulnerable on the outside? True, there was Gagil with its core inside its mouth, but every time a core had to be protruding a ways outside the flesh.
Avas, being built from angels, have cores too, Asuka. She admitted as much. Like an angel, it's also vulnerable. We just layered armour over it. The core is essential to the AT field projection system. Think of it like a biomimetic energy transformer. At least the reason in the Ava is that there really isn't enough place for the other unnecessary biomachinery within the torso. For the angels, well,
given how huge some of them could be, that idea didn't hold water. If it needed to be exposed for the AT field to function, layering armour over it should also prevent the Avas from using it.
Maybe it's like a sign,
Asuka put in.
Like eyelets on a peacock's feathers. It says, "Look at me, I'm an angel." They come in all shapes and sizes, and only the red core identifies to others it's one of them instead of a normal animal. If any animal can get that big. Well, they do come from outer space, right? I don't believe all that light of the soul bullshit Shinji's going on about. We don't really detect AT fields, do we? We only know them through the interference they cause in normal space.
Ritsuko laughed. She resisted the urge to pat the pilot on the head.
That's very good thinking, Asuka. We can't just ask them why, but that's the most logical theory I've heard so far. Indeed, perturbations in space-time are assigned colours, blue being the most common pattern of shifted space identified with the angels. We instruct the Magi to ignore similar disturbances emitted by the Avas. We code them in as green.
The red-haired girl preened. Ritsuko's approval, it meant more to her than all the stale platitudes heaped upon her by other adults. In another time, Asuka would have viewed the scientists in some form of distrustful skepticism, as she held control over the Evangelions and monitored their sync scores. She was authority, and Asuka, of course, deeply distrusted of authority. In that place, though, while the blonde-haired woman was turned back towards her work, Asuka got a wistful look in her eyes. That Ritsuko was a scientist, like Mother. She was a workaholic, like Mother. However, Ritsuko would actually look at her, and they were each other's refuge in a world that steadily made less and less sense. Asuka would never really care for Misato as a mother figure. She was too irresponsible, too much of a big sister in means and manner. Ritsuko's logic, Ritsuko's professionalism, it was unassailable. She wished... Do you need anything more, Asuka? Ritsuko turned away from the sync report. You're free to go now. We don't have anything more that requires your presence here in this boring place. I believe the other pilot's already left.
Oh, sorry to be a bother.
She bowed slightly.
I'm going now.
Ritsuko smiled and waved aside. Later, Asuka. However, the other pilots hadn't already left. Shinji was in a cafeteria somewhere with Maya, massaging the young woman's overworked shoulders. She also pressed crushed ice in bags to her tired, vein-burning eyes. Ray. She waited there near the laboratory, leaning on a hallway wall. Asuka narrowed her eyes and passed her by without saying anything. Pilot Tsuyu. She turned back, wary. What? You did today a hasty, foolish thing, said Ray. Jumping into a volcano without any protection. You didn't even deploy your AT field until Pilot Hikari reminded you had one. Do you wish to die? Asuka stomped over and snarled into the other girl's face.
I don't need any criticism of my piloting from you.
You did so to save Pilot Hikari. Asuka narrowed her eyes.
Yeah, so what?
She sneered a bit.
Are you going to try and warn me off some more? He's not yours, first child. If you want to be his doll, fine. But don't blame me if he gets bored after a while.
Wei shook her head slowly. No, I wish to thank you. She bowed her head a fraction. Fighting for him. That could make you my sister. If anything, that only made Asuka more angry. She glared at the other pilots and put her hands to either side to loom over the blue-haired girl. She locked looks with those unblinking red eyes, as if taking a challenge. Ray endured a few more moments of such silent, scathing disapproval. Asuka hated to be compared to her. She sighed softly. Either kiss me or go away, Ray said tonelessly. I wish to move, Pilot Tsuyu. Asuka made some sort of strange strangled sound and pushed away. Her anger rose by another magnitude. She opened her mouth to deliver a furious tirade, then stopped. Her blood pounded through her veins. A red haze was filling her vision. Violence called to her, but not yet enough to reach critical mass. The more rational part of her brain still showed there was no justifiable reason for that extreme reaction.
Oh, because she was smiling at me.
Just didn't sound good in a murder trial. Adding,
she accused me of propositioning her, so I had to kill her,
would only make them even more suspicious of her non-existent phobic lesbian tendencies. Asuka screamed incoherently and stomped off out of the hallway. It brought her to wishing for blood faster than anything. Ray blinked. What an odd person, she said. It was night time in Tokyo 3. The events of earlier, around sunset again, had yet to get through the military censor. By morning, Nerve and the government would have something with a sufficiently positive spin. The two organisations normally rubbed each other the wrong way, but Shinji served as a bridge between the two. The officials on either side both recognised his desire to simply save the human race by working all together. Sincerity worked easily, where manipulations and devious behaviour required the manoeuvring of far too many pieces. It could collapse so easily if the pawns knew they were being moved into place. The young king shames others' interaction. Furthermore, those around could recognise the potential there to be a great mature sovereign. There were those who sought to prune it, while others worked to preserve that and secure their place in the future. Misato and Asuka had already grown used to his nightly walks after dinner. It was time for the soaps, anyway, and as a male he apparently had no desire to even overhear the hyper-dramatic things. Pen could just take refuge in the fridge. He sat down on a bench, strangely enough the very same Asuka and Kaoru had favoured. Soon enough, two dark individuals joined him. Hello, Kaikuri-san, he greeted Agent Kentaro. Kentaro Kaikuri. He didn't dare ask if that was really his real name, or just one that was assigned. Agent Jiro Maeda had already admitted his was an assumed moniker, but that his real name really was Jiro. Maeda-san? The agent sat behind him.
Hey, Shinji-kun, today was a funny day, wasn't it?
Said Agent Jiro.
Things were peculiar, reported the elder agent. Ryuji, as the UN representative, can override Gendo in certain situations. As it wasn't an emergency, Nerve couldn't take command.
Recovering an intact angel. That was a calculated risk, Shinji replied.
Of course. What Ryuji did, however, was to give blanket approval without clearing it with his superiors beforehand. He made no calls. As expected, someone had to meet with him and ask.
Not just over phone? It seems a mundane enough thing. I believe he was just trying to get back into Masato-san's good graces.
With Gendo absent, though, face-to-face contact would help in seeing if Ryuji's starting to turn, Agent Jiro put in. It's rather well known in our circle that Kaji is something like a gigolo. He gets around. He works for Gendo as much as he worked for anyone.
His loyalty is somewhat suspect,
Agent Kentaro continued.
The UN, Nerve, they each offer him incentives and he tries to play them off against each other. It could backfire horribly.
Speaking of which,
the younger agent leaned back and grinned.
What do you got to sweeten our employment?
Kid,
just kidding. Reporting in this way just feels really weird.
His grin grew wider.
By the way, I don't know if Kaji's really as good a spy as he likes to think he is. Old man here can really play the half-senile grandfather card if he has to. Kaji met with a middle-aged woman with a cat. She just bumped into the conversation and showed the two around the sights. Seeing two old folks spar like that, trying to keep it casual with each other while knowing that they're both spooks.
Scary, man. You still have a long way to go, kid. And I'm not that old, damn it. Neither was she.
What's that?
Getting defensive? He grinned some more.
I wonder why.
Respect the trade, said Shinji. It wasn't in a scolding tone, but somehow it forced the younger agent back to a serious tone. You had plenty of chances to take this knowledge to someone else. What you're doing for me? Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Don't mention it. It's our pleasure.
Agent Jiro frowned. Literally, little boss, don't think we hadn't considered just shoving this problem off to someone else.
There's no one else in the business that just won't abuse it, though. It boils down to power, power, power. They're just going to interfere with what Nerve should be doing. Saving the world.
And the world is worth saving, isn't it, Jiro-san?
I'm sure it is!
Because it's this world that produced rock and roll? Shinji, too, grinned a bit. The younger agent looked at his partner, aghast.
You told him about that?
Kid, I'm old. But even I don't listen to Elvis. The Beatles, Queen, all the others from the underwater country. Good choices.
I wasn't ashamed of it. Damn it. It's just private, you know? He sighed. I wonder if we're ever going to get back to that world.
Eventually, said Shinji.
Hopefully,
said Agent Kentaro. I'm not going to bribe you with music or money, Jiro-san. The agent stuck his hands deep into his pockets and slumped.
Damn. I mean, yeah, it's alright.
What you're looking for isn't a material thing. It's a feeling. It's a sensation. It's the knowing God's in his heaven and all's right with the world. I can't give you that. Something dropped into his lap.
Hey, what's this?
Do you see that foreign car over there? Agent Jiro picked up the car keys. Ford, that was written on the keychain. He looked up at something black and angular parked under a streetlight.
No way! How could you? You're giving us a car? We already have one.
Shinji grinned slightly.
Not like this. You know, I can find out how you manage this, said Agent Kentaro. He smirked a bit. No one makes cars like that anymore. Modifying a classic chassis for electric power. Good choice. He reached out and grabbed the keys.
Hey!
I drive, you shut up.
Uncool, old man, uncool, grumbled his partner. Better have a damn good sound system. Nerve's just too goddamn cheap that way.
Oh, it does. Trust me, it does. Shinji's grin shortened slightly. Assembling this from many different channels makes it less likely it's been bugged, but you should check it over anyway.
Ahmed?
Of course. Among other things. Only an older car had enough room. Good choice, Agent Kentaro added. Whether it was of the boys or his own decision was up in the air. If his well-being's necessary to having that girl pilot well, then I guess we can keep an eye on Kaju whenever we've got time. Did you root out which one is his SEAL contact?
Boy, your age. Kaoru Nagisa. Kinda creepy, reported Agent Jiro.
Ironic, too.
Soyu, you've got to watch out for her. She's not like Ayanami.
Excellent work. Don't worry, I'll protect her.
I'm saying you should be careful. You're just too damn important to this game, he continued. We can't afford any mistakes. This is all our lives we're betting here.
I've made preparations. If something happens, we take this fight to SEAL. It would be apocalyptic on their heads, beyond what they experienced during Second Impact. You will let us in on that plan when we're less of a risk, won't you? Asked the older agent. Still, it's best if the worst doesn't come to pass. Shinji stood up. In the end, we must all decide what we can sacrifice to hold back the screaming dark. We won't go quietly into the night. He stretched out casually and waved to his guards. Thank you for watching out for me, sirs, he said in a louder voice. It was that complete facade of friendly innocence that scared the younger agent. There was something unnatural about that grey-haired boy from SEAL. This, however, it'd be too easy to forget that this was the boy who didn't go around strangling kittens. He'd already choked the life out of a man with his bare hands. It was a ruthlessness neither malicious nor self-serving, and for that ran all the deeper. Then he was away, walking back to his apartment.
Let me drive sometime,
said Agent Jiro, shivering slightly in the night air. No.
I can just hotwire the goddamn car.
I'm pretty sure it's booby-trapped that way.
Damn it. I'm pretty sure when I get to your age, I'm going to be tormenting my own rookie part like this. Damn it!
You're learning, said Agent Kentaro, still completely at ease. Maya returned from the vending machines.
Another all-nighter, senpai? That can't be good for you,
she said. Oh, thank you, Maya. Ritsuko took the offered cup and inhaled the aroma. She looked up and smiled impishly. What about you? You're here with me. You don't have to do this, you know. Maya smiled cutely and shrugged.
I have to help you in whatever way I can, senpai. You shouldn't have to suffer alone. You deserve better than that.
Ritsuko bent her head down to sip. Thank you, Maya, she said again, as her face was hidden from view. Nerve was deserted. It was almost midnight. Somewhere at the other side of the world, Gendo Ikari was having breakfast. What he was negotiating for was likewise of vital importance. Units 3 and 4 were nearly complete. It was a valid enough reason, even urgent, to leave the country. He made a sound above his coffee. The obvious ploy of the old men to get their troops into Nerve was easily rebuffed. Surely they hoped to disgrace him, if the habit of the Evangelions to turn everything around them to rubble proved true. Less damage could have been done if he was willing to look above his seeming peak and accept help. Oddly enough, he also believed in the people of Nerve. He had no doubts they would succeed. There had to be a secondary goal somewhere, something that only he could prevent. He smiled slightly at the waitress. She looked surprised. A kind word had her blush. The rugged, the misunderstood. Someone who had exceedingly high standards, and she was the most special woman in the world. He knew his deceptions well. It was you that honed his skills to the highest degree. Meanwhile, another of his victims sighed in the comfort of knowing he wasn't around. She lazily circled about in her chair. Ritsuko saw Maya leaning over a control panel, who in the casualness of the deep overtime had already shucked her jacket too. She was 24, yet still looked and acted sometimes like a teenager. The scientist smiled a bit, again, as she took a sip. Perhaps Masato was right. Maya was just that dependable. Hold on. Ritsuko frowned slightly and stood up. She walked over to the workers' lieutenant and felt up her bare left arm. The young woman eeped.
Senpai!
That's interesting, said Ritsuko, all rope-like and barely discernible, but there were indeed strong muscles there. She hadn't expected that out of Maya, who projected a personality more useful for her brains than anything. Have you been working out? She looked away.
A healthy mind relies upon a healthy body. On nights like this, it creates stress. There are two ways to handle stress. Either recuperate for some time after suffering through it, or to prepare beforehand on how to enjoy it. Having a stronger body can keep the mind thinking clearly for longer.
Very wise of you, Ritsuko responded. Another thing she hadn't expected. So it seems her assistant was more interesting beyond her innate mousiness. A mouse that roared, perhaps.
That sounds like an excellent idea. Maybe I should try it too sometime. Can you recommend me to your gym? Maybe we could take aerobics together.
Maya blushed.
Is that really... What I do isn't like what you'd really be up to experiencing, Senpai. It's a bit too... I'm sorry, I can't let you.
Oh, God. It's not one of those classes with the mismatched colour outfits and the 80s music, is it? All those power poses. Maya blushed some more.
Put like that? Well, you could say it's very much like that.
Ritsuko laughed. Oh, it's all right. Nothing to be embarrassed about. If you don't want to let me see you like that, it's fine.
Thank you, Senpai. Doesn't Nerve already have a gym?
Oh, yes, that's correct. I should schedule it sometime. She went over to her laboratory desk to get a post-it. She wrote that idea down, and just as she was about to tear off the scrap of paper, glanced down to see the foam spinning around her cup. Ritsuko licked her lips and dipped her ballpoint pen into the coffee. She stirred, sending the foam swirling and breaking up. She took out the pen and watched it spiral about, finally meeting and reforming in a smaller white blob in the centre. She blinked. Her lips twitched.
Maya!
She shouted. The young woman turned around.
Senpai!
Ritsuko had a grin too wide, eyes too open and bloodshot. It was the ranged look that frankly just scared Maya.
Give me the images of the last battle against the angel,
the scientist commanded. Maya nodded and began to search the archives.
No, I mean, shoot!
Ritsuko in her haste picked up her cup, had spilled the drink over herself. Oh well, her blouse was black anyway.
I mean the last angel we fought. Give me the scene with the AT fields.
Maya brought that video up. Ritsuko silently watched all 3 minutes 80 seconds of it.
Play it again.
Then at the positron shot bending around the Avas and back to the angels, she said,
Stop there. Senpai?
Don't move, she said firmly as she typed over her assistant's shoulders.
I need you to finish this up when I'm done.
She began to chuckle.
Why don't we just attack using a compressed AT field? Because the field itself doesn't exist per se. Enough with that defying physics every time. Now we can force that work to with it.
Ritsuko's wild grin. Her fingers just flew over the keyboard, such speed as putting her thoughts into complex laced equations. Maya blushed at the sight.
Senpai, she's shining. She's burning so bright,
she thought. She sighed and relaxed into the strange embrace, just basking in that intoxicating brilliance. Everyone involved had to report to Nerve prompt and early. Death threats proved to be necessary. Even Shinji looked unwilling. He was used to waking up early, but not at 3 in the morning.
Ah! Ritz-chan, you look like hell!
Gasped Masato, her own sleepy complaints briefly derailed.
Shut up! Growled the scientist. Her desk had at least 20 empty paper cups on it. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hair was frazzled.
I have your solution, Masato. Now, Maya will explain it to you. Now, I will go home. I will go to sleep. Anyone that disturbs me will be stabbed. Repeatedly.
And thus, almost drunkenly, Ritsuko left the laboratory. A technician too slow to get out of her way got a fraction of the berserker energy threatening to explode right out of her. The critical combination of caffeine and sugar fueled her strike. He lay there on the hallway, clutching his gonads. Nerve was a particularly merciless organisation. Maya made an embarrassed She'd actually fallen asleep last night. Her body was already used to operating on just 4 hours of rest.
Please follow me into the main conference room.
It was a bigger place than a mini-theatre, but couldn't seat as many people. A large table dominated the featureless room, and a large flat monitor completely covered the far wall. Maya hooked up the main display to her laptop. A video of the battle against Ramil started to play. Strangely enough,
The main conference room had a screen big enough for movies but not surround sound. The mini-theatre had a dinky white screen but full aural sound. Maya coughed as those thoughts slowly leached away at what she planned on saying. Perhaps she did need more sleep too.
Okay. The AT field, shown here, is the primary defensive mechanism of the enemy we call angels. It renders them immune to most forms of conventional attack, making the Ava as the only viable option against them.
The screen showed the AT field repelling the howitzer shot.
The AT field is known as phase-shifted space. Ritsuko-senpai hit on an epiphany last night. Absolute territory exists. The AT field doesn't. What we recognise as the AT field is merely the manifestation of the properties of absolute territory. It's defined as the region in which the values of matter and energy break down into a quantum state. The angels utilise the quantum properties of the AT field to simultaneously convert or transform states of matter and energy.
Asuka lifted her hand.
What the hell? That's not a scientific analysis. That's almost like magic. Anything can happen if we think of it like that.
That's what it appears to be. But Ritsuko-senpai, she realised this fate-shifted space had its limits. Like in this angel, too much energy directed to one spot was able to overwhelm its ability to redirect that energy. Each angel can only handle so much power, even though it should theoretically be capable of producing an infinite amount of it.
She changed the display to that of Units 1 and 2, combining their AT field to deflect the particle beam around them.
Resisting head-on the positron attack meant all the energy had to go somewhere, and in this instance, the angel had to accept the strain of both directing the input and likewise pulling on its own power source to keep its AT field barrier up. The Evangelions here simply imitated a limited electromagnetic property and simply shoved the beam aside. The energy goes out, and it's those mountains behind it that accepts the excess energy.
Misato raised her hand.
So what does this have to do with anything? I mean, it's kind of obvious. No matter how powerful an engine you have, you need a transmission capable of holding on to the strain of high speeds. Yes, Sandalphon-senpai. However, the AT field also seems to have a secondary purpose. Angels are made of exotic matter that decays rapidly, or even explodes violently when the core and AT field is gone. The ones that remained usable were those which once had actual solid shells made out of rare but natural materials. This angel, for example,
referring to Emil,
had armour composed of many different ceramic and metallic compounds. The AT field does not exist,
said Ray.
Absolute territory refers to the space in which an angel may exist. Exactly!
Maya switched the view back to Israfil.
These two angels use their AT fields with such variety and precision. None of it, however, violates the laws of physics despite all appearances. It's because they must convert to our energy state if their attacks had to even have a chance of affecting us. The energy beams composed of heavy ions. Their claws rely on localized field barriers to maintain a molecular edge. Notice here, they can apparently switch between different field properties as well. Now the new angel is the direct literal opposite. Its AT field is turned inward to maintain itself. It's an energy drain instead of an energy fountain like the previous angel. Note how the lava compressed and cooled. Energy is being taken out of the molecules.
So what's Ritsuko's big idea?
Misato asked.
Explosive methods are useless. It's just too tough to be affected by such spread-out force. Conventional weapons, even massive anti-armor shots like that of penetrators or bolters, which rely on kinetic energy, will also be less useful. We're pumping energy into one point, and unfortunately, that point's very small, and the enemy's very, very big. A positron beam would be better, since it delivers that shock to every portion of its effective diameter. But we would need way more than just the energy of Japan to create a beam that would hold long enough to carve it up through all that reinforced armour. And because its AT field is directed inwards, the Evangelions can neutralise it, which so far has been their only way to defeat the angels.
So if we don't have any weapons that would work...
The operations commander was quick on the uptake, even if she hadn't had her morning beer yet.
Did you and Ritsuko figure out a new one that will?
Weapon? To call it that would be an insult to the inspired genius that Ritsuko-senpai did.
Maya sniffed. She changed the screen to a line drawing, that of two overlapping ovals.
It's so simple and we couldn't even believe the angels hadn't thought of it. Or probably they already had, since they they like to use energy attacks. Not like this, though.
The screen showed the tactic of the Avers curving the beam around themselves after Israfel had sent it back.
Consider, what if instead of the angel being caught by surprise by that bi-directional attack, it combined the shots and sent it back to the Avers?
We just bend it back again, Shinji replied.
Did the attack lose or gain energy by doing that?
Asuka stood up. She gasped out,
"Oh my god!"
as it hit her. Ritsuko, it was all so insane, yet logical. There were limits to the absurdity. There had to be. She just then overflowed with admiration for the woman. Maya smiled back, sharing that awestruck realization.
Yes, the AT field to deflect the positron beam imitates an electromagnetic property. It's a minuscule compared to the charge it already has, but every pass does pump a little bit more energy into it. Now imagine.
The overlapping oblongs slowly shifted into the symbol of infinity.
What if we set up a field as a funnel and bend the charged particle beam around and around, feeding itself thousands of times per second? The additional charge each time is barely worth noticing, but it builds and builds and builds until we don't need the power of Japan to accelerate heavy ions to a significant fraction of light speed. Each pass makes it go just slightly faster, packing the energy in the charged particles tighter and tighter.
Plasma, Asuka breathed.
How do we keep it from exploding and killing us all? You expect us to do this, right? This has got to be insanely more dangerous than fighting the angel hand to hand.
Actually, no, it's not. Around the two Evangelions, you have an accelerating charged particle beam. Let go and it keeps going in one direction, driven by its own incredible momentum. It's going to vaporize everything in its path until it gets past the Earth's curvature and out into space. But it won't explode. Or it shouldn't.
Ibuki-san, Shinji raised his hand. To his Warhammer knowledge, dealing with raw plasma in any form was always dangerous. Are you sure about this?
Truthfully? No. If the AT field fails, there's still a chance that instead of expanding, the loop constricts to slice right through the Avers.
She shrugged.
But you can just create the opposing fields over your heads. This solution has going for it the radical simplicity of its approach, the speed it can be tested, and of course how little we need in the way of extra equipment.
What about the power drain for the Avers? We can't be getting something out of nothing. This plan still needs us to keep that field even,
Asuka said.
We're giving power to the beam from stripping electrons from the air itself and the Earth's own magnetic field. The power drain for keeping the AT field constant should be constant too. We still need to test it.
If it works, it should work spectacularly.
The red-haired pilot sat back down and groaned.
But if it fails?
Lieutenant Ibuki, which Evangelions are needed for this operation? That is according to Senpai, you and Asuka, of course. Shinji's uncontrollable sync ratio just won't do. He'd be more useful as bait.
Yay me, said he. Misato smirked and kicked back from her legs up on the conference table.
This talk's nice and all, but let's get to testing this. Let's see if this crazy plan of Ritsuko's will work like, well, any of my crazy plans.
A few hours later, the orange and red Evangelions faced each other at the far outskirts of the city. The trucks feeding power to the umbilical cables were all taking shelter behind a hill. Misato and Maya stood outside, wearing adaptive dark sunglasses.
Ray! Asuka! Are you ready?
Misato spoke into her radio.
Yes.
Of course!
The woman looked up at Unit 1 looming above them, holding a positron rifle.
Give it a shot, Shinji!
Yes. He pulled on the trigger. Zap! A bright purple beam shot out between the two Evangelions below. The beam curved aside towards the orange Ava and around it, then towards the red Ava, which had it curve around itself and back to the other Evangelion in a closed loop. Quickly, a glowing ring grew around the two.
Give it another, Shinji. Let's see if we can make it go faster.
Zap! Another shot with the positron beam didn't seem to have any noticeable effect. The sensors marked an increase in the contained energy though. As expected, it was slightly more than the combined values of two positron shots and increasing very, very slowly.
It's not as impressive as I hoped.
Misato said to Maya.
How long do they need to hold it? If it's more than 30 minutes, I don't think this is going to be of any use.
Maya looked aside and grinned confidently.
Have faith, Misato-senpai. Shinji? One more, please.
Thrup! Thum! Everyone winced at the sudden brightness. A strong wind began to gust, howling under the midday sun.
Oh, we have fusion so quickly,
said Maya.
Well, I didn't expect this.
Misato pressed down to keep her cap on her head. She was turned away from the shining sight.
It's really sucking things in. This could get too dangerous. The event window is so very small, Misato-senpai. It's not an event horizon by any stretch of the imagination. The overlapping AT fields create a shifting yet repelling force against each other that only serves to funnel in air from one direction as the activity creates a low-pressure region. And of course, air has hydrogen. We're now actually generating excess electrical power just from the dynamic flow. Not nearly enough to cover what we're losing just to keep the field up, but still.
The field held. Both girls didn't feel much strain. They already had their eyes closed and simply concentrated on that feeling. It was a reverse synchronization. Their natural dislike for each other actually helped in that instance. By sheer force of will alone.
I hope Ritz-chan has happy dreams. She deserves it.
The operations director then grinned.
All right, time to let it go. Shinji, force your AT field in to destabilize and release it.
I'm heading off now. While the Ava stood up to walk down the hill, the two women ran for the command truck to see what was happening and hopefully to survive should things go horribly wrong. As expected, it was Tokyo 3. Shinji knelt below the spinning ring and prepared his field, thinking on a small bend in it as well. He pushed an edge into the ring, and the seething energy instantly sank into his AT field. Then up, into the blue and out into the void. Principio Eternus roared. The other Avas joined its triumph momentarily.
First behold the might of man,
whispered Maya.
We wield the light. We won't go silently into the night. What do you mean I have to sleep with her?
Asuka shouted while pointing at Rei. Misato finished off her beer and then burped out in satisfaction.
Do you need to phrase it like that? It's only for one night.
She shrugged.
It's too much to hope for synchronization like with Shinji, but since you two have to work together tomorrow, why not get to know each other? Baka Shinji isn't here. Why can't she just sleep in his room?
Rei looked away. There was a very, very faint blush. To spend the night in his room. Misato actually noticed that and smirked cat-like.
What's your problem?
She asked Asuka.
So what if I leave you two without any supervision for the night? Be girls! Chat about things! Seriously, what's wrong with getting to know each other? I have no problems in attempting to connect with Pilot Soyu.
Asuka growled. The blue-haired girl's words were always so carefully neutral, at the same time apparently designed to piss her off.
Why does Shinji need to be in the Geo front anyway? Oh, we're still modifying Unit 1 for extended battery operation. We're going to feed you girls all the power we can spare, so he just needs to know and practice how much he can abuse his AT field with that limited power supply.
She shrugged.
You girls need your rest. Tomorrow it's your time to shine.
Pilot Akari will protect us, said Rei.
There's no reason to fear.
Asuka held a shaking fist up. Alone, she might not be able to resist the urge to murder this girl.
This is the unbreakable wall of Jericho,
Asuka said, stabbing with her forefinger down at the strip of white tape.
You will not cross it!
That wall was broken.
Fine! An even bigger wall! The Great Wall!
Rei sat there, cross-legged facing Asuka. That too is broken. Asuka huffed and looked away, putting her hands on her thighs. What else? Berlin Wall? No, broken too.
This is my absolute territory! You will not cross it!
Oh, Rei nodded. Asuka lay down and pulled her futon over her head. She wanted absolute darkness and absolute silence. She could almost hear in that emptiness a distant, oily laughter. She was still so weak, so hesitant. When would it stop being a mask and become herself? Did Shinji suffer from the same doubts? He wondered. He had to. He was just such a boy. Tomorrow we kill again, thought Shinji. Ah, machine spirit, I feel your joy. Yes, let us fight as one. Let there be glorious slaughter. Blood for us. Asuka shivered. Somehow, it was like everyone kept leaving her behind. It was so irritating. Wait a second. Asuka abruptly shoved herself out of her futon. She pointed out indignant. Ha! I was right! You're not asleep! You're... She blinked. What the hell are you doing? Foray was closer to the line, running her palms over in mime-like motions. She looked down upon the other girl and very slightly smiled. I am merely inspecting the nature of your AT field, she said, given her own nature that had a literal meaning. Ray also wanted to understand what it was that made Shinji value Asuka's life, over, of course, his service to humanity. Surprisingly, there was little for her to be disappointed over. Within the other pilot lay the seed for a hero, or a dark champion. Ray tilted her head to the side, her simple way of adding emphasis to her scant expressions. She tapped at the invisible partition. I am respecting your desire for privacy. Ah! Acting dumb pisses me off then more than anything! She punched out. There's nothing there! Thunk. Asuka blinked. What the... Hesitantly, she reached out. Her fingers met on the empty space. Yes, there was nothing there. She clutched at her own hair. Ah! She was starting to snap. She just knew it. And she knew who to blame on that. She opened her eyes a fraction, at Ray still sitting there like some sort of bodhisattva. Do you hate me, Pilot Tsuyu? Hell yes! No hesitation at all in that answer. That baka Shinji! I don't care about that anymore. He's second place. By the greater good, there's nothing in this stupid earth that could possibly piss me off better than you. Good. She blinked. Wait, so you admit it? You really were just trying to piss me off? Pilot Tsuyu, your heart is filled with chaos. You are designated our team leader, but how can you master the battlefield if you cannot yet master yourself? Ray bowed slightly. There are many and more things about you, but your will is still clouded. You are lost. You are tormented, because you ask questions that need not be asked. Questions? Why fight? Why die? Why love? Why hate? Why should you care what others think? Asuka sniffed. But asking those is what makes us human. Animals, dolls, don't need to question their existence. Talk? Pilot Tsuyu, Shinji-kun had once said to me, dolphins might have had their own language. Their brains and their chittering. It could have been talk. And are worthy creatures in their own right. In second impact they died. Humans do. Humans dare. Talk is cheap, Pilot Tsuyu. Power is only bought through sacrifice. Eh? Asuka brought her knees up to under her chin. Shinji saying something like that? No way. Trying to pass himself off as cool and hard-boiled. Ray's mind reeled with all the possible puns. She looked disoriented for a moment. A very small giggle escaped her. And what about you? Asked Asuka, not having noticed. It must be nice to live so free of doubts. Somewhat. And that is why I, too, hate you, Pilot Tsuyu. You have not seen what I have seen. You have not suffered as I have suffered. And yet you catch his eye so easily. Ray looked gentle. I want to see if you do deserve him. Asuka blushed and looked away. You're stupid too. Why should I even want a baka like him? He stands in my way, always stealing all my glory. Your glory, Pilot Tsuyu? What about the greater good? She winced. Hatred, despair, desire, ambition. The roads to chaos are these. When your heart is chaotic, your strength is dilute. Look too far into the future and you lose the ability to affect the present. Power is only bought through sacrifice, Pilot Tsuyu. I weep, or I would if I could, at all you have given up for your strength. Still you ask for more. What else would you give? Would you embrace that chaos at cost of what makes you what you are now? Will you restrain your will in the iron discipline, becoming a role unto yourself? Will you live only in the now, sacrificing the future for utter power in the moment?
Do you always talk like this? My God, you're wordy. You don't look like it, but you're heavy.
She humped.
Damn, can't you think of anything else less philosophical?
Life in itself is a philosophical journey, replied Ray. That is not why I believe it better not to ask. Live as you must live. Love whom you wish to love. And if you must kill,
then kill without looking back,
finished Oscar. She breathed in deep. She hugged her knees.
You hate me, because I'm still too afraid to see I'm a murderer too. It doesn't matter that the enemy is the enemy. We are killing them.
Either all life is sacred or nothing is. Either all must end up feeding another, or each has the right to struggle to be free. I do not ask the questions, Pilot Tsuyu. He wants answers for these, and I cannot give it to him. I beg of you, Pilot Tsuyu. Help him.
Him? Baka Shinji.
Stupid indeed, but he must try. That's how he must live.
Ayanami.
She looked down and twitched her toes.
I still hate you. You who never need to ask. You're as dull. I hate you.
You who can go where I cannot go. You who can see what I cannot see. I hate you as well. And both girls smiled. One thing about power is that you don't need to sacrifice something of your own to attain it. Of others would do as well. You may also take of what others have already given up for. At last they understood. Coexistence. It was possible. After all, peaceful wasn't mentioned anywhere. And it was morning. Shinji looked nervous. The girls, they were getting along. Asuka was cheerily asking Rei about her favourite flower of all things. Something white, was her response.
No colour flowers? How boring.
White is the presence of all colours, Pilot Tsuyu. It is black that is the absence of colour.
There you go again, contradicting everything I say,
Asuka complained and pouted. Shinji shivered. Scary.
Listen up, boys and girls,
Misato shouted through the comms.
Operation Shining Wednesday is ready to go. Evangelions will deploy above the city since the enemy's tilting up to attack from above ground. While it would be convenient to evade all our static defences, it knows that its size will be a disadvantage fighting underground. It needs to destroy the Avers first before it has a chance of getting a nerve,
Asuka said, with a V sign out with Unit 2's fingers. The Avers were already at the launch gates.
If that thing underestimates us, then it's got another thing coming. We've got more than just evasions and dirty tricks. Nice attitude, Asuka. Just don't overestimate yourselves when you're out there.
What do we have in the way of conventional support? Asked Ray.
UN forces already have strategic bombers and offshore assets loaded with heavy missiles. All they're asking for now is an exit point to lock onto, said Shigeru. Let's hope it's far away from the city.
If the Angel doesn't divert from its current drilling route, then it should emerge right behind the mountain ridge on the city's right side,
noted Ritsuko. She looked well rested.
Event Kamagataki! Oh no!
Maya gasped.
The Teddy Bear Museum!
Up on the command desk, Kozo Fuyutsuki sighed. Damn that Akari. This should be his headache. Still, such good kids. All relaxed and unconventional as they might be, it looked as if the future had never been in better hands. The bomber pilots grinned as they saw the Avers emerge. Seeing them run from the last battle, that was funny. They no longer seemed quite so invincible. However, that also made them all the more likely. Not just berserker dumbass war machines, but held by people with their own foibles and their own sensible notions of retreat. "We won't be bombing you today," said one, saluting casually, though the pilots wouldn't know. One by one, the Evangelions stood up out from a hillside access and their horizontal rail delivery system. Below was the highway, and a relatively flat clearing in the mountainous Hakone region.
Evangelion 0 and 2, prepare AT field control positions, said Misato. Shinji, set up the order mount for the positron cannon.
Roger, said the three pilots. The red and orange Avers sought out the power cables, while the purple one unpacked an oversized gun mount. Avers 0 and 2 switched to external power, plugging in. The third cable went into the automount, and an arriving heavy positron cannon was then latched into it. Shinji looked at his own timer. 10 minutes, maybe more if all he did was stay put. However, once the Angel emerged, everyone expected him to start jumping about like a rabbit on crack. Sometimes it really sucked to be the resident AT field master. It wasn't as if he intended to do the impossible. It just happens. "I'm sending exit point data to your plug interface now," said Ritsuko. "Aim the cannon at the field tunnel and ready to receive the Angel when it emerges. Heavy weapons should be arriving from the rails now." Large metal boxes were disgorged, rapidly one after the other from the hill. Quickly, Shinji unpacked rocket launchers, positron rifles, heavy bolters, and even prog spears. "When's the enemy coming out?" he asked.
"Approximately 2 minutes,"
said Maya.
"Girls, ready?"
"Ready, Misato!"
Ava's 0 and 2 stood a short distance apart, apparently glaring at each other. The air around the two began to grow misty.
"Raising AT field!"
"Automatic firing. Commencing in 3, 2, 1. Ritsuko smirked. "Firing." The positron cannon, the one used against Ramil, fired. The shot struck dead centre an invisible spot, bent around, and then turned into a glowing ring. The Avers held their arms out, as if to keep it from closing in. The opposite was true, however. They were compressing the beam more and more to fight its natural tendency to collimate. The automount fired again. The purple beam abruptly brightened into a brilliant white glow. Field supercompression was achieved. Fusion was just a side effect. This was what Sandalphon had taught humanity. Once they knew it was possible, there was just a short gap between learning and improving upon it. The ground began to shake.
"Here it comes!"
shouted Misato. The ground began to break apart, to glow red hot, and Sandalphon emerged from the viscous pool of its own creation. It roared, and almost immediately was beset by a multitude of anti-armor defenses. Missiles dropped from above. Shells and larger self-guided missiles rained from battleships out in the Gulf. Unit 1 began pumping shot after shot of packed positrons into it. Sandalphon dived, actually wounded. Its fish-like form for swimming in lava was much less durable than its above-ground toad-like combat form.
Did we get it?"
asked one of the tank commanders. They'd yet to be called into battle. Nerve's response was no. They had no idea of where the core was. It would have to be an extremely lucky coincidence, even with all the volume of fire directed against it. If an N2 mine could do nothing more than annoy it, then this was a battle that wouldn't be won so easily. Earthquake. And a severe one. Japan was an unstable land, and many buildings were prepared for such an event. However, it still unnerved everyone. To their credit, the two pilots didn't even let so much as a wavering show in their AT field. It was fixed in their mind, not relative to the Earth or the Ava, but as an absolute. It was the gun mount that needed adjusting, but the Magi easily made corrections. Sandalphon, in full combat form, leapt out of the pit. It sent the earth shaking as it stomped about, such was its size and armoured girth. Its roar, oddly enough, was really very much similar to Godzilla.
"Oh, we're so gonna die,"
said the tank commander from earlier.
"All forces, attack!"
was the order. UN Air Force, UN Navy, and the JSSDF. The air was filled with an angry, loud whistling. Sandalphon put one foot in front of the other. Its arm-like fins had become spiked arms, and its tail had split into two splayed limbs. It moved like a gorilla, but with a massive mouth. On its back was a strange snail-like shell, though apparently less for protection than as an anchor for even more spines. The mobility form was about 3 times the size of an Ava. Combat form was around 6 times that, the size of a small mountain. It lifted the 2 strange tails it had, and between the leftover fins, dirt, rocks and other miscellaneous debris floated up. It all flowed into a rough ball that glowed and was compressed into a combat projectile, gleaming in perfect spherical shape and hardness. Throwing rocks. The army didn't quite get what was so threatening about that. Until they fired at it, and not only did their AP rounds fail to leave so much as a scratch, it wasn't even the slightest bit moved from its course. Oh, and it was approximately the size of a house. Wham! Sandalphon began pitching such big boulders around like some sort of baseball fanatic. It was also frighteningly accurate. Shinji ran down the slope and extended his AT field. "Retreat!" he told the tank formation. "You don't need to die here!" "Roger, Principio Eternus. Good hunting." The Evangelion roared a challenge and the angel turned. Its stalks quivered. It was accepting. It threw one of the explosive oblongs at the purple Ava. Shinji had learned a few more tricks of his AT field. Ritsuko-sensei, well, she had looked so disgusted and forlorn all throughout it, but she managed to teach him how to soften up the field. It was already proven the AT field could handle kinetic energy. He could push, he could pull. Now, try catching. Slowly, he said to himself. Impact would probably trigger it. He slowed the explosive fetus and caught it softly in the Ava's palm. Now throw it back. Boom! Sandalphon roared. Damn these Lilim and their trickery. It was all futile in the end. To spit in the universe's eye, to shout out that they existed, it was not sufficient reason to be. Funk, funk! 2 more bunker busters slammed into its back. The tips actually went a raise through the rocky outer armour. Sandalphon was annoyed. Flying things. As if by doing that these little creatures could be special. One of its back spines exploded, splintering out. The slivers shot in all over and up to the sky, spinning like brass shrapnel. Height was no protection. The damn things not only seemed able to defy gravity, each homed into their position. Was it the thermal exhaust? Silhouette? How could those things track stealth bombers? The pilots ejected, but the slivers continued on. They had to hope for a clear path through that storm of spinning needles. Parachutes were cut. Seats pierced through. Shinji screamed out an incoherent battle cry and let free with the heavy bolter. Slowly, Sandalphon turned its head. It looked down upon the comparatively tiny Ava and snorted out 2 pillars of steam. Unworthy. It slapped down with one of its arms. And screeched in pain. Oh, those spines. Those big, sharp spines. Those spines coated, laced through, held together and made incredibly strong by an AT field. So of course Principio Eternus would tear one off and stab the angel with it. It would of course be vulnerable to its own field pattern. Sandalphon flicked away with its limb and sent the Ava flying off. Shinji spun about in midair and landed in a crouch. Not yet. Not yet. A few minutes more. The girls needed more time to finish their crucial task. The machine spirit sang for blood and death, but he had to hold it back. He apologized. There were many more battles yet to fight. It wouldn't be good to sell their lives just to get rid of this one. He continued to attack it with many useless weapons, trying to keep its focus. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't get at that core. The spiky protrusions were efficient at deflecting fire without totally covering it up. As he was doing nothing more than shake off powder from its rocky plates, the angel was starting to lose interest. He needed more time. He saw the spine he'd broken off earlier. Many things will die if you cut off their heads, he heard a familiar, disciplined voice say. Poking out their eyes will also inconvenience them. Here we go, he said softly. By the Emperor, let my aim be true! He extended his AT field out to the fullest, coated that spine with his will, and threw it with all his might. It unerringly dug into Sandalphon's left eye. The angel screeched and trashed about in pain. Misato-san! Almost done, Shinji! Lure it in! Come on, you unholy beast! He shouted out, pulling on the controls and sending the Evangelion running conspicuously towards the bend. He picked up a nearby rocket launcher and shot at the angel. The explosions inflicted no damage, but did draw its attention. Come get me if you can! Sandalphon pulled out the spike in its eye and roared. The black flesh there bubbled up, and the eye quickly regenerated. It set off in pursuit in a rather ponderous yet deceptively quick pace. As Sandalphon rounded the bend, a thought entered its strange consciousness. Why is it so bright in here? The angel saw the glowy spinning thing, the rampant hostility in that combined AT field, and quickly realised. Bad things were afoot in here. It began to turn away. Oh no! Said Misato. Shinji!
Don't let it go!
Oh, damn it! He groaned. Since when did these things start to get common sense? He began to chase after it. Something standing tall as the hills, and nonetheless as capable of moving with such smooth speed. Where it passed, there was just blackened, dead soil.
As much as I'd like to term that a human invention,
Ritsko said through the link,
us humans aren't really that reasonable at all, even most of the time.
The girls really couldn't spare any attention away from their task. However, Asuka muttered, "Baka," while Ray might have smirked a little bit. Shinji stopped and began to run back. He went over to one of the power cable posts. He began to pull and pull at the length of umbilical cables, piling up a tall cord behind him.
Shinji!
Masato said indignantly.
What are you doing? It's getting away!
An unknowable mind cannot be manipulated, he said to himself. And that's when we must use brute force, he pulled roughly one last time.
Yes,
said Masato weakly.
But it's still getting away.
Principio Eternus deployed its prog knife and hacked away at the cable. It cut the length free from its pulse and tied the plug end into a short loop. It hefted the entire thing onto its shoulder and continued to give chase. The Angel was heading towards Tokyo 3, though taking the long route. 4 minutes of power, Shinji mused. Nothing out of the ordinary. The Evangelion ran uphill at full burn all the way. He jumped off as he crested it. Sandalphon exploded all 5 remaining back spines and sent a cloud of large, sharp fragments at the Ava. Instead of a barrier, Principio Eternus roared and swiped at the air, creating a strong wind that blew aside things in its way. It spun the weighted end of its improvised rope around its head.
No way. He can't be thinking, muttered Ritsuko. He wouldn't.
Misato grinned.
He would.
The Evangelion threw the impromptu lasso and hooked it over one of the protective protrusions Sandalphon had over its core. It was a perfect throw, possible only to someone who had no idea of the limits of what the AT field could do, and had no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Shinji didn't root for joy. There was no doubt whatsoever it would succeed. He slammed into the Angel's side and began to pull himself up. The rope had caught around one of the stubs remaining of the back spines. Sandalphon began slapping at itself, but just couldn't reach that far. There was still the spinning cloud of field-enhanced fragments above his head, but Shinji didn't have time to worry about little things like that. He reached out with his AT field and Sandalphon slammed onto a field wall. It reared back and tried to escape another way, only to smack against another wall. "There's nowhere to run, fiend," Shinji said in a low tone. He sought to drive that meaning somehow into the Angel's mind. He wanted it to hear him, the way he could speak to Ray, when words needed no sounds and intent went directly into the soul. Fight, die, or somehow win. There's no room for cowardice here. He pulled on the rope. "Turn around!" Misato looked sheepish, as everyone there turned to her as if questioning her bad influence. Maya was more an optimistic fortitude, Ritsuko on burning logic. She had always been to hell with it. Katsuragi. Perhaps she had overdone that pep talk a bit.
Shinji-kun, I don't think you can make it move like that. The Angel, it's not a cow.
Sandalphon unfortunately chose that time to blow through the open holes in its back, in a sound approximating a moo. However, there were other tones, high and low, and in the end the effect was quite musical. All the needle-like fragments stopped spinning and oriented towards the Ava. Meanwhile, the Angel continued to batter itself against the AT field wall.
"Shinji-kun!"
A strange high-pitched sound filled the air.
"What was that?"
"Pilot Tsuyu, do not let yourself waver. We must keep the field stable."
"I know that!"
Asuka closed her eyes again.
"But it's getting harder to contain it. Baka, Shinji, just get it here already," she grumbled out. "They had to cut our comms to keep us from being distracted. It's getting too boring."
"Master damage all over all portions of the Ava,"
Mai reported, holding back a scream.
"Almost been broken through nearly everywhere."
"But the AT field," Makoto said, numb. "It's still holding. The Angel is turning around." Masato bit her lower lip. She was shaking slightly.
"Life signs."
"All connections to the entry plug are gone, Masato-senpai. Normally the Ava would be berserking right now."
Perhaps now that its primary target has been dealt with, it seeks to take out the other threats,
Ritsuko had to say.
The other Avers are helpless right now. The slightest drop in the AT field will reap them disaster. Damn it!
Misato slammed her fist down at the metal frame of the command tower.
We can release the beam without a third Aver, right? Our trump card. We can use it. We can't let it be wasted. We can release the beam,
Ritsuko agreed.
but there's no guarantee of any form of accuracy.
Misato clutched her hair.
Ah! It can't end like this!
Captain Katsuragi! Misato abruptly stood at attention. Kozo Fuyutsuki sighed. Keep your composure. A battle is not the time to lose your objectivity. Even if we lose a pilot, even if we lose all 3 pilots, we fight so that the human race may survive.
Yes, sir.
Besides, it would help if you would all just look up at the screen.
Eh?
The Evangelion regretfully resembled an urchin. Its purple and green coloration didn't help there. However, slowly, one by one, the spines fell off. Though pockmarked, the Ava was healing very, very rapidly. It couldn't die from such a simple thing like that. It refused to die.
Connections! Restored!
Maya gasped.
Shinji-kun!
Thank you, machine spirit. He began to laugh.
100%.
Ritsuko gaped at the readout.
Feedback increases as the sync ratio increases. So it's 0. Ah! Not that machine spirit insanity again!
She screamed.
How can you even remain conscious after that sudden switch? Damn you, Mini Gendo. I will figure it out. I will train and give it to Asuka, and she will crush you. Science! That's the power of man. Logic will yet win the day.
She pointed at the screen.
Someday. Oi, Ritz-chan.
Keep your composure, Dr. Akagi. Fuyutsuki sighed. He shrugged and chuckled. Well, I suppose it's useless by now. Nobody's listening.
Shinji-kun! Yeah! Go!
Misato cheered.
Show that stupid angel who's boss! Reinforcing all this insanity,
Ritsuko groaned out.
You just end up feeding each other. There is no hope for recovery. As long as they end up saving the Earth, Ritsuko-senpai? If there's still even an Earth after all these fools are done with it.
Now, monster, cry your tears, for I understand your song. This rock, this flesh. Do you think the light of your soul is stronger than mine? I say move! He pulled at the cables, tilting the angel's gargantuan head back. Prove the greatness of your purpose, or waste all that you sacrificed to get here. Move! Sandalphon sang out again, and once more the spines rose into the air. It flicked up with the remnants of its tail, and 3 hard globes formed around itself. It was the only external sign of AT field use the angel had. However, it was also one that couldn't be neutralized. Principio Aeternus opened its mouth, but instead of its already familiar roar, a strange tone went out. All the floating things just dropped back to the ground. Sandalphon's already huge eyes bulged. Its field simply couldn't be disturbed like that. Nothing had changed, yet as long as that tone existed, as long as that light shone from deep within, it couldn't lift. Its strength outside of itself was gone. Do you dare believe your purpose greater than mine? Thought Shinji. I don't know if you can understand me, beast, but until you can prove it to yourself, you cannot hope to overcome! The angel stopped. It looked towards Tokyo 3. Adam. Its siblings had tried and failed. They went out with no hope of returning. Could it abandon Adam for its own safety? It was what the Lilin would do. One's own purposes, one's own will, ahead of the great purpose. No. Sandalphon roared. It began to slap at itself, stomp around and slam into the hillsides, trying to dislodge the enemy on its back. Now and again it would slam into another invisible wall, but it no longer cared. I might not be able to reach your core, monster, but with this prog knife I can truly try and dig behind your neck, under your skull, and destroy that from the other side. He began laughing with reckless abandon. Energy as motion.
Life is motion. This is the song of our existence. Stop moving and you die! Sandalphon roared out a three-part tone, as if to say, get this crazy moron off my back. It ran about, berserking, uncaring of where it might go. It ran right around the valley bend. Oh, so bright. Sandalphon roared. No matter. Its armour, its prayer unto itself, it was perfect. It knew only an exact hit to the core would kill it. It was just too big. It could just heal from anything. It could endure anything. It had the limitless potential of something utterly new. Ray! Asuka! Shinji shouted. Release it now! About damn time! She screamed back. Take that! How dare you make us cute girls wait for this long, you bastard! Flash! Pilot Soryu, the beam is homing into Pilot Takari. You are not supposed to think of him as you wrap a distortion field around the exiting beam to keep it from collimating. Oops! Sandalphon put its long claws to the ground, and quickly the ground around it began to heat up and hollow out. Yeah, right. It blew out a strong note. Screw you bastards. I'm going home. Sandalphon shifted into its mobile form, shedding its outer shell of rocks, chitin and secondary organs. The Evangelion dropped onto its back. The angel reached back with its eye stalk-like tendrils, now that it was finally in reach. 2 explosive angel embryos touched and detonated. Smoke filled the view. The compressed energy conversion beam reached the top of that rising pillar of smoke and bent down. The Angel and Principio Eternus were already diving deep underground, filling it in with magma in their wake. A sudden and massive earthquake, sufficient to knock the Evangelions up above off their feet. Shinji, said Asuka. I didn't mean to. No, I didn't want to kill him. Ray smiled a bit. A baka too. A homing property. Interesting. The field propagates as long as there is an Ava to generate it. Ray wondered how far they could guide a beam like that. Dr. Akagi's triumph of creative reason was tainted again by the illogic of Akari's existence. Misato! What happened? Did it work? All sensors are down, said Makoto. We have no tracking systems usable at that depth. No readings at all from the Evangelion, said Maya, her screen blank of data. It only made sense. After all, the Magi had to receive information from radio and microwave emitters sank all over the Ava's frame. There was simply too much rock in the ray. Shinji-kun, Misato nodded. It had to have worked. Now's the time for you to rise dramatically out of all that smoke. Misato, this isn't some anime, Ritsuko groaned out. But better than thinking he's dead, Maya said to herself. Believe in him. He's just got to be alright. He has to be. Shinji-kun! Buckers, Ray said again. Another shaking. Bubbling hot lava filled up the hole Sandalphon left. A minute or so passed, with everyone staring at it. Unit 1. It wasn't protected against extremes in heat or pressure. Even when Unit 2 jumped into the volcano, it only remained there for a few seconds. This wasn't mentioned in the scrolls, Fuyutsuki thought. It was written he would have to suffer a lot more before he was allowed to die. It was spat right out of that pit. Principio Eternus roared and spun about in midair. It landed face first into the dirt, between the 2 other Avas. Ray had her Unit 0 crouched down and poke at the purple Ava's scorched, smoking back. Pilot Takari? Moshi Moshi? Baka Shinji! What the hell do you think you were doing? Asuka screamed out. She began kicking at the unmoving Unit 1 with her own Ava. Playing the hero like that? I don't care how awesome it's supposed to look. It's just stupid if you die! The LCL kept her tears from falling. Then, should you not stop trying to kill him? You're more dangerous to him than anything else here. What's that? You want some of this too? Back at the command center, Fuyutsuki sighed. They're embarrassing us again. Everyone there began to cheer as Unit 1 began to get back up off its feet. He let himself chuckle, relieved as well. This, with all the forces we mobilized.
It's the most expensive operation Nerve carried out thus far. Carrie, if only you could see it for what it is. These young people, so easily and without fear going into the fight. Instrumentality means less to them than the struggle in every passing moment. Fighting something vastly larger than yourself, bending the unknown energies to your will, unflinching in the face of certain death, and for the first time, light casualties. Despite the frightening potential, Tokyo 3 was undamaged. There was clear cause for celebration, as there never had been seen before in the entire Hakone region. It could have been grim, but they pulled through.
Oi, oi, said Masato. Save it for the Geo front. You're all not old enough for this sexual tension.
What? You deviant! Stop projecting your filthy desires on us! We're here to fight the angels, not to let you live vicariously through us all the while you get old and saggy!
You! How dare you! All right, Missy. Ritsuko, as Ava Operations Director, I deem it time for another team-building exercise. As soon as they get back, simulation training. Shinji, kick her ass!
Ha! You can try! Langley saw you the Great won't be that easy to defeat!
Euphoria after battle, so much the greater when it seemed they could lose everything at the edge of a single moment. It chased away that fear, and in further lack of any restraint they tried to forget that embarrassing state. Better this foolish humiliation than that born of honest emotion.
Fine. Maya? I've got the rebalance point system up, Senpai.
Fuyutsuki sighed again. At least it wasn't on an open channel this time. Ah! He stood up and pointed. You there, with the camera! That Nerve crewman fled. He was tackled by several others. Damn you bastard! I won't let you make us Kachan look bad! Several more men were added to the pile. Ah, the nerve of it. Why am I always surrounded by buckers? Whispered Ray, listening in. The blue-haired girl then smirked a bit. I guess I'm something of a bucker as well. It was Thursday in Tokyo 3. It was his room. It was evening. Let there be darkness, and it was good. He was only 14, but he felt so tired. There was only so much he could do alone, with the limits of his immature body imposing upon the pitiless pace of his mind. However, it was the fulfilled fatigue of a job well done. So, that's what Ray's been doing, thought Shinji. I suppose it doesn't really surprise me that much. I've always known she was capable. Asking the orc, of course it was just plastic and paint. However, along the way, Shinji had just conveniently forgotten about how he shouldn't be expecting any report out of mere processed petrochemical products. The other half of your soul, Commander. However, in the way of looking at things, I must admit to some unease. The war boss began to laugh.
What's that matter? You knows it. If we orcs just had a smart enough boss, a boss that was full with the Gorkin bashy and walking thinking, ya would have been stomped flat. Puny chaos boys, scared little elder. Ah! Orcs are the biggest and the strongest. Only we orcs can get your emperor off his toilet.
I have grown used to your rampant stupidity, Zeno. I could even admit it would be boring if you were not there to now and test the worth of our faith and reason. But this, your stupidity has attained levels beyond even what I can believe. This goes even beyond being too stupid to die. The Space Marine pointed with his powered index finger. To profane the Golden Throne. Cool, Commander?
Can it be? Are you willing at last to see the truth in heresy?
I see. That's the sort of subtle pun Ray-chan would make, wouldn't she? Bowing to the porcelain god. I may not be the Emperor, but I believe even he would be amused by something like that. He is too great to be brought low by something like that. As a great example of humanity, sometimes we just need to be able to laugh at ourselves. He has the supreme right to laugh at himself too. What can we offer to him to make him enjoy his living? All that power. And it's not right that he should alone suffer so long and so alone for our sake. The rest of you fools are just too barbaric to identify the sheer superiority of Eldar humour. It is likewise the pinnacle of that craft. What else is capable of driving hilarity, not just on multiple levels, but in different time periods?
I am chaos. I know cinch. And yet even I would call that overcomplicated mass cruelty.
Oh, you are so getting a demonstration, Warp Spawn. Shinji relaxed and let their antics play out in his mind. He smiled. It had been a long, hard, senseless day. Misato, Maya, Ritsuko, Asuka, Rei, they'd all gone out for a girls' night on the town. Blessed silence. Looking back, had he ever complained that his life was too boring? He sighed. He grew serious. So Rei wrote that screenplay. I suppose she had the time. Her sincerity just shines through it. He frowned slightly.
But it makes you uneasy. Chaos beasts, star gods. How much of that was real, and how much of it was fantasy?
Shinji put his hands behind his head and stared up at the shadows on the ceiling. He took a deep breath. There's still so much we don't know about the angels and why they're attacking. Why are they so willing to kill and die? Rei, I said for her to keep some of her secrets. She's to be free to be her own person that way. A certain human selfishness. A certain separate human identity. But the angels are not human, young king. Until we know them, we cannot defeat them. It is much easier for the enemy to know about us, and that is our weakness. So far, we have run only through sheer mortal unpredictability.
Stronger and stronger do our enemies grow, learning and learning from each battle we fight, said the Space Marine. Either we ourselves must grow stronger still, or find some means of weakening them.
Rei isn't an angel, though. The fight against them is all she's ever known. Asking Lilith? It's too much of a risk. If we ever awaken her, then all this destruction would pale in comparison. I wonder where we can pick up that knowledge.
Knowledge is power, but if you lack that, then you must seek other forms of forcing your will. Power. Pure power. That is what you need now. You must decide what shape your destiny should be.
Decide?
What you gonna be? Will you be your own boss? Will you stomps all that's in your way?
Or will you attempt to claim what is yours by right and by conquest, my young king? What in the warp? Not you, too. The Space Marine sighed.
Red versus blue.
Indecision, the root of failure. Your strength shall remain dilute.
The Chaos Sun laughed and laughed.
But take your time, Bright Lord. Time is your ally. This is far too entertaining for me to give up.
He seemed to shrug.
At least count your blessings. Far, far worse could it be.
2 days later, the homeroom teacher stood in front of the class and said in his bland voice,
We have a new student here with us today. She will be joining us from here on, so treat her well.
A blushing girl with short, dark brown hair bowed.
My name is Mali Kirishima,
She said a little too loudly.
I'm very pleased to meet all of you.
She looked up and her eyes met Shinji's for a moment. Her face turned even redder and she bowed again to hide her embarrassment. She fidgeted in place. 2 certain girls stared at her with narrow gazes. Kensuke began cackling for no readily apparent reason. Shinji closed the school computer and began banging his head against the hard edge of his desk. Much, much more suffering before he's allowed to die.